Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We're continuing our run through of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and we are up to the season finale for season 2. It's called the Jem'Hadar. It is episode 26 of season 2, aired on June 12th, 1994, written by Ira Steven Behr, directed by Kim Friedman, who has returned. She was around here recently with a couple episodes. The first woman to direct a Deep Space Nine. They liked her so much they brought her back for a couple more episodes. Isn't that equality right there? On a camping trip in the Gamma Quadrant, Sisko, Jake, Nog, and Quark encounter the ruthless soldiers of the Dominion, the Jem'Hadar. Anyway, Clay, the person you're the person I would be willing to do a science project in the Gamma Quadrant with. How are you?
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Well, I would like to say that Quark in the jungle is very much me in the jungle. I would do nothing but complain. Like, I enjoy camping, but if there's one thing I hate, it's bugs and humidity.
I actually wrote that down. I've never related to Quark more than I relate to him in this episode. It was a real turning point for me in the character.
No, overall, I was totally on Team Quark in this episode because not only did I identify with him in his thoughts towards spending an extended period of time in the hot jungle, but he was also speaking aloud a lot of stuff that I've been saying about Starfleet up to this point, which I really enjoyed. So I thought it was good.
So we will, we'll take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip, and we're going to come back, and we're going to break down the season finale of season 2 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Is called the Jem'Hadar.
If the founders are the ones who give the orders, I want to meet them. Those aren't my orders.
He can't take you to the founders because they don't exist. They're a myth.
The founders exist. They created the Dominion. And the Jem'Hadar are their servants. A Ferengi and a human. I was hoping the first race I'd meet from the other side of the anomaly would be the Klingons. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's too late for apologies. The Dominion will no longer stand by and allow ships from your side to violate our territory. I hear the Klingons are effective warriors. What's that weapon they're so fond of, the Bat'leth? I am not interested in discussing the Klingons. All right. Then what about the Cardassians? Are you satisfied with the treaty your Federation made with them? It seems a tactical error. How do you know so much about our side of the galaxy? We gain more knowledge every day. And now we have you to help us learn more. I don't plan on telling you anything. I won't be the one asking the questions. Who will? I was really hoping to meet a Klingon.
All right, Clay. So at this point, DS9 is on its own. TNG has ended. Voyager will start shortly after this. It starts a couple episodes into season 3 of Deep Space Nine. This is the one portion of its history where Star Trek DS9 is all on its own. Michael Piller, his impact pretty much wraps up after this episode. This is the last one where he's writing supervisor, basically head writer of the show. Ira Steven Behr will step in. Although, I feel that Pillar's influence has been diminishing in probably the past 8 or 10 episodes. So the second half of the second season of DS9 had been very different from everything that came before it. And I think that it doesn't really culminate here. But I'll say one bit of trivia before passing it off to you. Mm-hmm. DS9 never does a part 1, part 2 season finale, season premiere storyline.
Really?
Yeah. So the TNG did it every single year, except for the first year. They did it every single year. Well, I guess the second year didn't either because it was a clip show that wrapped it up. But starting with Best of Both Worlds, they did it every single year. Voyager does it every year, I'm pretty sure.
Could you imagine if a television show now had a season finale that was a clip show?
I know. It would.
There would be riots in the streets.
It would be terrible. Like
Do you imagine if the second to last season of Breaking Bad was a clip show for the final episode?
I was thinking people probably don't remember the TNG clip show fondly. If it had been like snuck in the middle of the season, I think it might have actually been remembered a little bit better than it was.
Well, it's kind of a lost, I don't want to say art, but it's kind of a lost art, isn't it?
It is.
They're not really applicable anymore in modern television. The last show that I watched that I can remember doing one was The Office.
Yep.
And usually when they do it, and The Simpsons did this too, where they would have some sort of framing device that put the clips into a
story.
A story that made sense and recontextualized them a bit.
My favorite clip show is the Clerks animated series. The second episode is a clip show.
Yeah. Man, what an underrated show that was. That was such a good show.
There's a way to do a clip show good.
Did you know? Sorry, a little bit of trivia. Did you know the showrunner for that show is currently the showrunner on Veep, and he used to work on Seinfeld. Oh
yeah, it's the fat guy. What's his name?
I think it's Brad something.
Is it? No, it's and he also did Eurotrip, and he's the writer on VIP right now. David Mandel, right?
Yes,
David Mandel. Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it was Brad.
Yeah.
He also, I also learned that he owns a very large quantity of original pages from The Dark Knight Returns. Apparently, I mean, he's got like more money than God.
Yeah.
And apparently, he spends a lot of it on comic book art. So,
yes,
Dave Mandel, if you're listening, I have a lot of comic book art.
You have a lot of money. Let's make this work.
I need to move.
Let's see. So what the hell was I saying? Oh, they don't do cliffhangers. DS9 always does this kind of a thing where the storyline basically ends, and then the next season is a somewhat of not a reset, but they sort of use the first 2 episodes of the season to set the stage for the season. I think I prefer DS9's way about it. And actually, the Jem'Hadar is maybe the weakest of the season finales that DS9 would ever do. But I prefer, it feels a little bit more modern to not do this cliffhanger that inevitably, the second part is going to be a letdown when you come back. I prefer what they do here. So on a technical level, would you say that you'd prefer ending the season on a story that maybe leaves things open-ended but isn't to be continued at the end of the screen?
I would say yes. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a toss-up because was Best of Both Worlds a season ender? It was, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that still. But generally, yes, the second half is not... doesn't really deliver on the expectations of the first half if the first half is really good. But yeah, I would say generally yes. I would prefer the way they do it here, where it's like it's definitely not a cliffhanger, but it's not just like they don't just tie everything up in a bow and dun, 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 dun,
Yeah, right.
Freeze frame high five at the end.
But it's still more of a complete story than stepping away in the climax of like if this was split over 2-parter, it probably would have been when Sisko and Quark escape from the little force field thing. They'd probably draw it out more in the second half about what happens, but that would be to be continued would be them running out of the cave, I would think.
I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this does kind of feel like a first-parter. Because if you really look at what's going on, there's not a ton that's happening.
No.
It's basically just sitting around and talking in a bunch of different locations. Well, I mean, that's most things, but it's Sisko and Quark and the girl are trapped, and then Nog and Jake are trying to fly away, and it's a lot of stage setting. There's not really a lot actually going on. So if you told me this was the first half of a 2-parter, I would believe you, even though it does basically more or less wrap up at the end. It has a more complete ending than most first parters do.
I think its structure is actually the worst part of the episode.
Yeah.
I think that it takes way too long to get going with what they're trying to do, and I don't know if the camping thing is supposed to be lighthearted, leading into a very dark, sadder, I guess would be the word, ending towards things. But it doesn't feel like the show is intentionally trying to make a schism there. It just feels like they're delaying it for a long time before revealing the Jem'Hadar to you.
Yeah, it just seemed like they needed something to do. Like there's no I mean, even after they go to that planet, there's not really, after everything shakes out, there's not really any reason why it had to be that planet or anything.
Right. You kind of need to isolate Sisko and Quark is really the only thing. Yeah. But yeah, what'd you think of the Jem'Hadar?
I thought it was good. I thought it was overall a decent episode. Most of it being saved by Quark and his interactions with Sisko. Because I thought the stuff he was saying was really good, and it brings, like I said, it brings to the forefront a lot of. This falls right into that slot of, who's the showrunner now? Is it Ira
Steven Behr? Yeah.
Yeah, his
and everything but name. He takes over midway through season 3, but he is running the show at this point.
And what you were saying previously about him sort of pushing back against the Roddenberry thing, I mean, that's very clear in everything that Quark is saying, and it's stuff that we've talked about previously, where it's like, they push this idea of unity and everybody's accepted, but the people are basically racist towards the Ferengi, like across the board.
Yeah,
and even on TNG, it was just like, the Ferengi, nobody likes the Ferengi, and it's something. It's an interesting I don't know if ethical is the right word, but it's an interesting issue to have to reconcile in this world that they're setting up, and I'm happy somebody finally brought it up. And then I thought the last maybe 10 minutes I thought were great.
Yeah, the last 10 minutes are great in my opinion here.
Yeah, I thought I wonder if they're setting up the the Jem'Hadar as a little bit too powerful. For how easily they just sort of poo-poo all of the Starfleet technology and then blow up basically the Enterprise, which was a nice touch, by the way. That's a good way to show people how powerful it is, where you're just like, it's not the Enterprise, but it's the Enterprise. It does everything the Enterprise can do. So if it takes out the Enterprise, there's some heavy shit going on. They seem a little bit overpowered, but I don't know how much that continues. But I thought it's the ending of this episode was the first time that I was like, fuck yeah. But coming from Sisko, like his last line was best of both worlds, part 1, adjacent, if not equal.
Yeah, sure. And his last line is, if the Dominion come through the wormhole, we're the first line. The first battle will be fought here. I need to be ready for them. Yeah,
I thought that was great. Like everything leading up to that, with the girl turning out to be a spy, I thought was good.
Were you fooled by that?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even think about it, to be honest with you.
I remember being very fooled by that. I remember being totally surprised that was the case, because I think it's believable if you're a Star Trek watcher, because they always kind of need that character who's there to explain what's going on to you. So it's not like it's awkward or expected, in my opinion, to have that character who's there to explain things. I was really actually very surprised by the twist at the end.
Yeah, I wonder if, looking back, if their plan seems a little suspect. I guess
the Dominion plan you're talking about? Yeah,
I don't know. I guess it works, because the point of it was to get her on as a spy, so I guess it's fine. But it seems a little long way around to do that. But
instead of just planting Eris in with the station, from the starts, like having them get captured and everything, I think it kind of makes sense. They want the Dominion from this episode want the Federation to know about them and what the repercussions will be for dealing with them. Mm-hmm. So I understand that. I was thinking the only weakness in the plan might be the fact that some of the Jem'Hadar who are aware that it's a setup get killed during the escape, but then they suicide kamikaze attack at the end anyway, which kind of saves it, because they're all willing to die for what the purpose is. That would have been my only problem. I think they sidestep it fairly nicely. I think it's just the fact that the Dominion wants the Federation to know what's going on, and simply inserting Eris into it wouldn't have been as dramatic for their purposes, I guess.
Yeah. I guess it's an interesting kind of thing, because it's like, well, they want the Federation to know what's going on, but they also want someone in there to get information about the Federation. So they're kind of just it seems like the necessity of having a spy is usually because you want to know what your enemy is doing, obviously, but ideally you don't actually fight the enemy, you know?
Right. Yeah, sure.
So coming out guns blazing against the Federation and also putting a spy in there seems like, well, why didn't you? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure why that they want the Federation to be aware of them, unless they say that and I missed it.
No, just the fact that they don't want them trespassing in their space, basically. So they have to make it. They have to make an example of what that means, and the only way to do that is to really show the force that you have behind you. And then, honestly, the Eris thing, the spy thing, almost feels tertiary. Like they don't really even care if she gets in there. It's just that's what it is.
Yeah, I guess, if you're thinking about it strategically, it's like, well, we're going to make this. Well, I guess it takes us another step back, too, which is like, well, what was their plan if Quark and Commander Sisko didn't happen to pick that planet to go to?
Yeah.
Like, was this meant to be their big coming out party to the Federation? And if so, what were they going to do in lieu of this? Like, were they, that kind of thing.
Well, that's it. Do you think that they don't know because they seem to know a lot about the Federation? Do you think that they didn't know that Sisko is coming over to that planet, I guess?
Oh, I mean, they might have.
Yeah.
But before I kind of went down that rabbit hole, I was just going to say, strategically, it does make sense that if you're going to present yourself to a potential enemy, you're going to want to, that's going to start a confrontation, so you're going to want to have somebody on the inside. So yeah, I would say that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess we'll get into it a little bit more about the methods of the Dominion and how they work and everything, because they do touch on it a little bit in this episode, so it might sort of fix these kind of resolution problems. But I guess that I just wanted to start with the Quark and Sisko thing, because I think thematically the two halves of the story tie into each other on some level. Mm-hmm. And the thematic tie there is the fact that, as you were talking about, Ira Steven Behr's sort of worldview of the Federation, both of the stories have to deal with the Federation being either naive or blind to the fact that there are options outside of their worldview. And it leads to a problem in both senses. So Quark and Sisko get into a fight where Quark sort of throws the thing back in Sisko's face about, as much as you hate us, we've never had war, genocidal wars, we've never had slavery and things like that. Quark's being a little bit dishonest. They are a culture that subjugates women and doesn't allow them to wear clothes and everything like that. So the Ferengi
but see, that doesn't count if they don't realize they're doing something wrong.
Right. See, I think it's more, it's not that Quark is making a truthful statement. I think what the script is actually doing is just saying that the moral relativism of the Roddenberry universe can be flipped and used against you. Mm-hmm. If you go around just saying like every culture is sort of relative to what it is, and you can't really, you can't make any judgments about what they're choosing to do. Having Quark do this is kind of it's food for thought, but he's not being 100% honest with it. Like, it's just adding a little bit of shades of gray to the interactions between the cultures.
Yeah, and I think it's great because it's, I think we've talked about this before, covering a couple other shows. Definitely when we covered Miami Vice, but I think the difference between Roddenberry and most of his writers is I don't know if Roddenberry realizes that the narrative, the narrative interest that comes from an idea like this, like the world that he's setting up, is when people go against it. And it's in other shows we've talked about it, basically like if you're a cop, let's say in Miami Vice, you're an undercover cop, being a good undercover cop does not make for good television. Crockett and Tubbs are not good undercover cops.
Yeah,
they're
right.
Terrible undercover cops. And that's what makes it interesting to watch. And I think that applies here too, because I mean, when you go by the book, you get Star Trek TNG season 1. It's setting up this context, and then having people from inside it and from outside it pushing against it is where your narrative conflict and action comes from. It's like oh shit, I just had it in my head. So I have a big thing in movies now. Happened in, I don't know if you saw Black Panther. I got this a bit in Black Panther, but the big one for me was Independence Day 2. I know it's a weird one to pull out, but I think that if you're going to present something advanced, like an advanced technology or an advanced civilization or something like that, it can't just work the way it's supposed to for the entire movie or the entire story. Like Minority Report. Minority Report sets up this very futuristic, advanced technology, and it stops. Well, it doesn't. I shouldn't say it stops working, but there's a cog thrown into the machine, right?
Yep. There's a flaw.
And so, and so like in Independence Day, the thing that bothered me was they set up the humans with having all of this futuristic alien technology that's, super powerful, and then the aliens just come back and they just fight them with the alien technology, and it's just like people shooting at each other for 2.5 hours. A very long movie. Yeah. Whereas, like narratively, I feel like the thing that makes sense is the aliens come back, the super advanced technology you have doesn't work against them, and so you're forced to go a different route, whether that's, back to the non-alien technology. You know what I mean? Just something that creates tension and against the idea, instead of just, all right, this is the part where they punch each other.
A little bit of a roller coaster as opposed to just a flatline action sequence for an hour.
Yeah, and in Black Panther, the thing that bothered me was that the technology was at such a high level, and at no point does anybody in the situations fighting not have access to equally advanced technology.
Right.
That it's just like you're kind of losing any sort of narrative tension about what's going on. And the stakes kind of go down because it just turns into people punching each other.
Yeah.
And I think as far as Star Trek is concerned, it's the same thing, where you've got these ideas. You've got the idea of the Federation and their all-inclusivity, if that's a word. I might have just made that up. You've got the Prime Directive. You've got these things that are rules that they go by, and the most interesting uses of these are when you push against them and you break them.
Yep.
So that's my long rant on the Federation.
No, it's true. It's a...
Because nobody wants to see the Federation go to a new planet, not get involved with this species that they haven't ever encountered before.
Yeah.
And then everybody shakes hands and says, I really like you for who you are and who you are as a person, and I don't have any ill feelings towards anyone.
Yeah, right.
It's Quark brings out this idea that it's like, just because you have a unified idea is the thing I've been saying. It doesn't take away that people are going to be the way people are.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are shitty. Even in the best societies, there are shitty people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Sisko is a shitty person, but everybody's got stuff like this. To say that you don't, you're being naive about yourself.
Right, and they're actually playing up. Sisko has previously said some fairly anti-Ferengi things in the series. There was an episode he didn't want Jake to hang out with Nog. That's always kind of a storyline. He always doesn't want Jake to hang out with Nog. Basically, it's basically the white parent saying he doesn't want his kid hanging out with a black kid, and it's oddly uncomfortable, and it's Sisko has a line that humans and Ferengi don't have a lot in common, and I don't think that will ever change, is something he says earlier in the series.
You've got this situation where it's like the operating procedure by which you are living your life and doing your job is very inclusive.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you personally still can't not like people.
Right.
And it's not the utopia that people would hope for, but it's a lot more realistic, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, and Quark's sort of calling them out for that hypocrisy of their
like you're an asshole, but I still do this podcast.
We're calling off the science project. That's no longer happening. Yeah, the Quark's calling out that hypocrisy, and the show is very interested in that hypocrisy there about how the Federation can have these ideals, but the people who work within the Federation don't seem to realize their own weaknesses against it. Yeah. They seem to think of themselves as higher and better. Like TNG season 1 is the epitome of just preachy. Every episode is them like lecturing some aliens that they come in contact with about the human way to do things. And DS9 this is a big split. This is maybe not a great episode, but this is a hugely important episode for how the show goes forward. Not just because the Dominion are introduced here and they're the antagonists for the remainder of the series, but it's the showrunner switch that we've been talking about, and what's the tone that's been happening for the past couple episodes is basically the way that DS9 moves forward here. Like, this is the way that the show sort of handles its stories. It gets better than this because I don't think this is a technically sound structure that they're dealing with here. But the last 10 minutes are the kind of excitement and interest and pairing it with the Quark storyline thematically. So to get back to that, the Federation interaction with the Dominion is basically a horrible first contact situation that's gone on here. And
it is a fascinating kind of reverse first contact, actually.
Yeah. How do you mean?
Well, because usually we see it from the point of view of the Federation making first contact.
Oh, I see.
Then it goes wrong somehow from that point. But here it's like, no, they are making first contact with the Federation. They are here to punch.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, I'd agree with that. Like the Dominion are taking the more aggressive maneuver again. They're interacting with the Federation as opposed to the other way around. But it's the naivete and the everything is hunky-dory attitude of the Federation has fed into this bad first contact because they went through the wormhole and they just started setting up colonies, right, without sort of figuring out what's going on over there. And they're thinking, well, we're all explorers. Everything's good. We're just going to go. Other people that we've interacted with previously in other series have always been very rational. And even if you're in TOS's Arena episode, even if we are fighting over territory, it's because we don't realize it. And once we realize that everything is going to be okay, we'll just kind of shake hands and walk off. This is the opposite reaction of what could have gone wrong. They run into something that they have no idea how they're operating. The enemy knows everything about them for some reason, and they are not willing to negotiate. There's not the way that the Dominion operate, as they say in this episode, is they'll offer you a olive branch. If you don't take it, they'll just kill you. And the olive branch is not really an olive branch. It's just we're going to allow you to do things for us, and you'll be happy with that arrangement, and we won't kill you.
It's funny. When I was doing my book Dead Meat a few years ago, I had this group in it called The Answer, who were the main antagonists of the story, and that is more or less what they did. That was they basically were getting a wrangle on the zombie problem by creating a society where they would go town to town and they'd be like, hey, you guys should join us. No pressure, and then people would join, and the ones that they didn't, they would kill. Yeah, which
very effective marketing.
Yeah, I wish I had seen this first. The only difference was they were actually spoilers for books I haven't written yet. They would release the zombies into the town, and they would swoop in and save everybody, and then they would offer that thing. So basically, they would replenish their own army by sending in a bunch of zombies to kill a bunch of people, and then they would come in, save everybody, and then whoever didn't join, they would kill them. They would turn to zombies, and then they would draft them back into
you got to reinvest that capital into your business.
They weren't losing anything. There was no overhead for this mission.
Right. Yep. I don't know. Before we get to the ending, I guess it's really just the Dominion to talk about. And
is the Jem'Hadar separate from the Dominion, or is it just a division of the Dominion?
They are one of the races that make up the Dominion.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was just like the name of
their
SS.
army. I say no. So the Dominion are basically a mirror version of the Federation. So there's a whole bunch of species. It's been said that the Dominion are basically the Klingon versions of the Dominion. The Klingons aren't a part of the Federation, but they serve that purpose, kind of. The Vorta are the other ones that we met. They didn't get named in this, but that's what Eris is. She's a Vorta. They've been roughly analogized to the Vulcans on some level. They're sort of a twisted version of them. What's
beyond
that?
Beyond the ears?
Beyond the ears. They're not... I don't want to say too much about... The Vorta changed the most out of everything. The Jem'Hadar are always going to be this kind of like brute force army mechanism of the Dominion. The Vorta change a little bit, and we haven't really gotten a good enough idea about what they are. They're sinister. They're sort of like shadowy subterfuge agents would be a good way to describe them.
Did you think they look kind of like the bad guys from Galaxy Quest?
Do you mean those like Swamp Thing looking aliens?
Yeah, the big like scaly looking alien guys with the shit coming out of the back of their head from Galaxy Quest?
Yeah,
I feel like they're very similar.
To the Jem'Hadar you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, the Jem'Hadar remind me of dinosaurs, although apparently they were supposed to be rhinoceros was like the inspiration.
I see. Well, what is a rhinoceros?
But just a dinosaur.
Bald dinosaur.
What do you think of... We'd made fun of the DS9 makeup to this point with the alien species. I think they knew this was important, and I think they did a good job with both of those, the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar designs.
Yeah, and also at the beginning, that weird guy who's just walking around the space station all the time got a nice in-camera
bump up. Yeah,
shot.
That's Morn. Yeah.
Does he? I hope he plays a big role in the future. Like he has some sort of
piece
of information or something.
He's always in the series. His name is an anagram of Norm from Cheers. So he's always at the bar. Yeah, that's his.
Nice.
But yeah, why don't you say something about what you thought about the introduction of the Jem'Hadar and everything like that before we can? I have a couple points that I wanted to throw back and forth.
I thought they were good. I liked the scene where he goes on to to Deep Space Nine. I think more than anything else, really.
Yes, that's their best scene. And I would make a few changes to this one. One of the changes would have been I would have opened this episode with Kira visiting New Bajor for the cold open.
Yes, yeah, that would have been good. Yeah,
and then that moment that you're talking about would have had slightly more impact. It is kind of enough to know that they wiped out a colony, which is particularly horrific for the Bajorans who have just gotten over this occupation thing. But that would have heightened that, I think, just to even know that these people existed and have a couple minutes of screen time with them.
Yeah, and I kind of wish when Kira was looking at that list of conquests that they had, because I think he says something like, here's a list of the ships that we've blown up.
Yep.
I wish they had read them off or a couple of them and commented on how impressive that was. But I don't know if you really need that because they obviously display that power later in the episode. But
yes, yeah.
I thought that scene was a lot better of an introduction than the stuff down on the planet.
Which is fairly generic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the stuff when they're in the force field thing is pretty generic, and the only thing that's really good about those scenes is the Quark's interaction with Sisko. Aside from that, it's pretty much run of the mill, stuck in a cave Star Trek stuff.
Yes, yeah. Stuck in the same cave that they're always stuck in for some reason.
Yeah, different angle. It's amazing you can shoot that cave from so many different angles.
I did like the Jem'Hadar talking about how he's disappointed that he met a human and a Ferengi coming through. I think that scene revealing how much they know is pretty good. That's probably like a 1B to the 1A of him showing up on the station and talking to them.
Yeah, talking about wishing he had met a Klingon. That was good. I like that.
Yes, so that's the... kind of a little bit of the Jem'Hadar that you get an insight into there. They're clearly warrior based. Obviously, they're like the battle force of the Dominion. They're disappointed with the human and Ferengi. They know about the Cardassian and human treaty that we talked about in the Maquis. Mm-hmm. They know that was a failure on the Federation's part. And then, so a lot of people compare we don't know too much about the Dominion at this point, but a lot of people compare them to the Borg on some way, that they are a sort of twisted version of the Federation. That usually makes for the most effective antagonist, is someone who's sort of similar to the protagonist, but different in some key way. Where the Borg were more play on the dark side of the Federation. What the Federation does is kind of assimilate other cultures and bring it into this blandness that is the Federation. And the Borg were just an aggressive or hyper-aggressive version of that, where you also lose any sense of individuality going forward. The Dominion are different than that, but the Dominion are just a caste structure federation where everyone has a role and everyone does something according to what their role is. It's kind of a play on the monocultures that Starfleet and the Federation run into all the time, where everyone seems to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. The Dominion are that, except the roles make up a bigger society structure, so it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of what they were trying to do with the Klingons on Discovery, where you've got where in Discovery the idea was they were unifying all these different houses of the Klingon people to fight against the encroaching Federation. It kind of felt a little bit like that, where you could say, like, I mean, they're obviously setting up the Dominion as bad guys, but you could almost look at it as they are bound together for the purpose of pushing back against the Federation, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, equal. So I think
which
we've talked
is
before.
interesting. Yeah, which is interesting because it's, you don't really see anybody do that. That's not flat out. Well, I guess are these guys flat out evil? Do they have? Is there gray coming up in these guys later on down the line?
They justify why they are the way that they are.
Okay.
Which maybe is good enough. They do add a lot more. I won't say anything to that. They do flesh out the Dominion too. You're not going to know everything about their history or like how they work or anything like that, but they do sort of explain why they operate the way that they do and how the society that they've formed works with each other. Mm-hmm. Because it's funny, like the Cardassians and the Romulans are always, and the Klingons are always called an empire, right? But you never see. An empire is, in the way that humans use it, is one state sort of conquers a bunch of people around them and then they subjugate them into their society. So you'd have different kinds of people, and you never see that with the Romulans and Cardassian. You never see a non-Cardassian citizen. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And
they're kind of like, they're more like China.
Right. Yeah. the Dominion.
If that sounded like racially insensitive, I didn't mean it to. I was just pointing out that it's,
Clay's just eating some General Chow's chicken right now, and he's just like, "This is exactly what's going."
I don't know what you're a general of, but I love your chicken.
The Dominion are more Starfleet-like, where it's the Empire is actually a bunch of different things that they. Eris mentions how her planet was conquered by the Dominion at some point, subjugated. Mm-hmm. So they are more in the sense of what an empire would actually be. Because we had a problem like, how could the Federation ever fight the Klingons in an equal war? Because there's only so many Klingons, while the Federation is huge at this point.
I mean, from what I've learned from Star Trek, you only see 6 Klingons at a time at any one time. So
and in Discovery, they were ready to bomb Earth. We were moments away from being destroyed in Discovery, and it didn't happen.
It's a good thing we dropped that bomb into the volcano in the middle of their planet. Oh, fucking hell, that show was bad.
So, and the last thing that we learn about the Dominion is that there's 3 major races of the Dominion in the series. We meet a bunch more, but they're kind of one-offs that we deal with. The Jem'Hadar, the Vorta, which is what Eris is, and then the Founders, who we haven't actually met yet.
And the Irish.
And the Irish, of course. The Space Irish, who didn't want to be a part of that.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing if one of the groups of the Dominion was the Space Irish.
The most fearsome. And that's just setting the table for that. They talk about the Founders a little bit in here, and I believe they talked about the Founders in Shadow Play. We were talking about how I think they might have been referring to the Dominion as a myth, or were they saying no? They're saying the Changelings were a myth, right?
Was that an episode, or was that the name of Ben Sisko's first jazz album?
He actually, Avery Brooks actually does do sort of Leonard Cohen-esque jazz readings of songs. So maybe it could be both.
I only know that because of that clip when Shatner's interviewing him on that Captain's documentary. Yeah, where he's just sitting there like tinkling on the piano, making him sing stuff.
He did the music for that documentary.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
it was a very strange scene.
he's a strange guy.
I would like to say, sorry, my favorite. Second favorite Sisko moment is when Quark comes onto the runabout and he's kind of exasperated, but he can't say it with his face, so he just goes like,
Yeah, Sisko's put on quite a bit in the early goings here. He just wants to have a somewhat inappropriately erotic trip with his son. That's all that Sisko.
I will say that scene where they're talking to each other by the campfire was like that was some shit. What's that Adam Sandler skit with?
Camp.
Yeah, whatever it's called. Damn it, I can't remember that.
Boy Scout or whatever, something like that. Yeah, with Alec Baldwin as the the scout leader. They always. I like the relationship with Jake and Sisko, but sometimes the physicality and the way that they interact is a little bit odd. Of like, this is not a real father-son relationship. What's going on here?
It's also. I assumed some of that was due to the camera positioning. Like, you got to be able to shoot a 2-shot or a back and forth with people laying on their sides.
Shoot overhead, like Arrested Development, where they're shooting down at them as they're laying side by side. Like, you can do that, and that does not come off as erotic. Yeah.
I did also notice for the first time, I think, that Jake Sisko is like 6 feet tall now.
He's really grown. He hit
Nog is very short. And they're like, isn't Nog like older than him or something in real life?
Yeah, Nog's like a 30-year-old man at this point. The actor is, yeah. So we'll get off of admiring Jake's young, tight body, and we'll move into...
yes.
So the last 10 minutes. I really love the last 10 minutes. The last 10 minutes of this episode are one of those things I'll look on YouTube just to watch those scenes. Starting with the Captain KO's sort of briefing on the station, where he displays all of the smugness that is going to get the Federation into trouble going forward.
I would like to say that was... Do you think they were like, all right, we're going to use a Galaxy-class starship. Get me discount store Patrick Stewart to be the captain of it.
Yes, I think that was 100% intentional. I think that in canon, it makes sense that the Galaxy-class is supposed to be the strongest ship in the fleet, but it's also purely done just to make people think of the Enterprise when the thing blows up, as you were saying. I think it's all intentional. I think basically getting someone who's kind of a weaker version of Patrick Stewart... That guy actually voices Skeletor on the He-Man animated series.
No shit. Really?
Yeah.
With the high-pitched Skeletor voice?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's that guy. I
was going to say, it's like you need someone with very specific diction. That's like the last pass the last test you have to pass to be the captain of a Galaxy-class ship.
The other thing I would have changed about this, I talked about seeing New Bajor would have been a good setup. If I were to fix the structure, I would have shown New Bajor at the beginning, and I would have had the camping trip take up less time, and Quark and Sisko stuff would have their dialogue would have happened as they were captured. That would have sped up the pace a little bit for me. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would do, and they tried to do this, and I'm really disappointed they couldn't do it, is I wanted the Odyssey's bridge scenes to be shot on the TNG set.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
That would have been... It looks like they're in a 2x5 room, basically, when they're shooting that stuff.
It looks like the way that they used to do it in the 60s, not the 60s, but before when they didn't have the technology to actually project, so they just have someone's face inside the computer screen.
Yeah.
So it's like you're just looking through a piece of glass to the actual people who are sitting in like a very, very small box. There's a great sci-fi movie. Italian sci-fi movie called Planet of the Vampires, where it's very clear that they're trying to do the face on the screen thing, but it's like, we don't know how to do that. Just stick his face behind a piece of glass.
Yes. Yep. Just all about framing. Why'd you like the last 10 minutes? I'll lead it off by just saying that making it the destruction of the Odyssey, a Galaxy-class ship, is super effective. One of the writers of the thing said that their intent was to been if that had been the Enterprise and Picard was there, it would have been the exact same result that they had run into. Mm-hmm. And I think that the scene is it's definitely one of the best battle sequences that the show has done to this point. The Jem'Hadar make a lot of sense. I think that the whole thing is paced really well. The only thing I would probably really change is that in typical 90s Star Trek fashion, after the Odyssey has been destroyed, Kira and Bashir have a great no dialogue reaction shot. It cuts to O'Brien, who says the Odyssey was retreating. There was no need for a suicide run, which is fine. Unfortunately, they then have Sisko say they're trying to show us how far they're willing to go, which is like kills the scene for me on some level. It's way too... It's hammering into the audience what the point of it is when it's clear what the point of the suicide run was. I would have changed that, but other than that, what would you enjoy about the last 10 minutes? Just the action pacing, or just the summation of everything? Well,
the actual space fight I only thought was okay, mainly because, again, I think they're a little overpowered because they've got these whatever special lasers that can just shoot right through the shields and damage the Galaxy-class things. And there's 3 of these ships, and none of the shooting at these Jem'Hadar ships seems to be doing anything. Yet they don't even bother with the runabouts. They could have killed everybody very quickly.
Yeah, one of the runabouts is in rough shape, but the runabouts are kind of a weakness of this at this point, right? Because it's basically a glorified shuttlecraft. Like there's no oomph to the runabouts, which is upsetting at this point. I will say
I was just gonna say they always keep talking about like adjusting the torpedo bays on the runabouts, and I keep thinking like they have torpedoes.
Yeah, the captain. Where do they fit? Would be my question.
Know.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's multiple rooms on them though, because at the end when they're back on the thing, he's like, "Jake, take the lady to that other room," and they just disappear.
She needs privacy. They do retcon the Jem'Hadar after this.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yes. And they also retcon the fact that no Vorta is ever going to have Eris's telekinesis powers.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah.
I did like the scene. I did like the stuff with her in the force field with the power dampening necklace on. It felt very 90s X-Men to me. I feel like in the 90s, every time the X-Men were captured, there was somebody that had some sort of device that dampened their mutant powers.
Yes, yeah, the Sentinels would capture them and put them into the working fields or something and strap that onto them. Yeah,
well, I was just going to say, the last 10 minutes, I thought the battle was okay. I think it was just, they took what seemed like it was going to be the flat resolution, which in every other episode, it would have just been, oh, well, it's a good thing we got away from that with our skin intact, and then there's this lady here. And then they just bust the doors open by blowing up the Odyssey and then her turning out to be a spy, and very clearly establishing these guys as people who are not fucking around and are most likely going to come back. Yeah, I just thought that stuff was great. I thought the blowing up of the Odyssey was more effective than I thought it was going to be, because that stuff can come off a little bit like I kind of generally don't love it when people determine stakes by killing people.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's a little cheap. But in this case, I think, it's very easy, and it's like, we've talked about some of this stuff before, but I thought, blowing up the Galaxy class starship was great. I thought it immediately sets up a power level for these guys or what they're willing to do, and they do it by destroying not literally the Enterprise, but basically the Enterprise. It's something. It's a symbol that you're familiar with, and I thought that was a great way to set them up. I thought that was, and it was just effective. It was a step forward that they usually don't take on this show. Yeah,
and I think that they play up KO, the captain, as kind of an asshole early, but I think he's actually very effective once he's in command. He's not irritating, and he's clearly trying to protect everyone that's there. He's doing what's in the best interest of everyone there. They ultimately not really sacrifice, but they ultimately die for what they do. And it would have been a misstep to have him be an asshole the whole way through, I think, because then you'd be like, well, fuck the Odyssey. Who cares about that thing? They reconcile it a little bit, and it makes sense towards the end. And I think the destruction of the Odyssey is actually one of the most effective starship destructions in the series, even including the movies to some point.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Because, usually when they blow up a starship, it's one you don't really care about. Or they're sacrificing it in order to, like in TOS, they blew up the original to save the day, basically. Yeah, it's usually some sort of sacrificial thing. Except for when it comes to the Borg, I guess. But in this case, it was straight up. They just lost. They just got beaten by a method of war that they were not expecting.
Right, yeah. A very antithetical to the Federation values method of war. Very, obviously based on kamikaze attacks of World War II. And everything.
I don't know if it would have had as much punch if they had just blown it up with lasers, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I like the whole thing. I like they set up the retreat. Bashir has the line about one of the Jem'Hadar ships is breaking formation, making a run. They try to intercept it. They try to shoot it down, and it just gets through and hits the Odyssey, and that's all she wrote for that ship.
I do kind of like that they, while they try to intercept it, it's kind of like they don't expect him to do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And so they're all completely baffled by it.
Yeah, yep. I think that's it. That's it for Season 2 of DS9. We'll take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip. We're going to come back and we will read patron thoughts, give our own thoughts, and then we will call this one a day.
I don't understand.
I've been looking over this collar of yours. I thought if I replicated it, I might be able to turn a tidy profit. Imagine my surprise when I discovered there's nothing in here. It's just a complicated locking device.
Which means you could have used your telekinetic abilities at any time. So the question is, why didn't you?
You seem to already know the answer.
The Jem'Hadar wanted us to escape, didn't they? That was the plan all along. For us to bring you back here so you could spy on the Federation.
Well done, Commander.
You're one of the founders, aren't you?
You think the founders would waste their time with you?
Constable.
Madam, if you'll come with us.
You have no idea what's begun here.
Okay, so patron thoughts for the Jem'Hadar. This is something, if you guys support the show on patreon.com/the Pensky File, you can leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. We read them, we react to them, and that's about it. But we appreciate your thoughts all nonetheless. Sometimes there's some good gems and some good jokes going here. Barry Wallace writes, the Jem'Hadar, absolutely love this episode for introducing us to the best Trek villains since the TNG gave us the Borg, and for setting up the future of the show. This is where DS9 really starts to get good. Gotta scroll down here a little bit. Joint Mango, the Jem'Hadar, aka Reptile Sardaukar. Is that the thing you were mentioning last time, Clay? The Dune army?
Sure.
You had mentioned something about Dune, saying that the Jem'Hadar reminded you of that, and I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it?
I think it sounds more like the Gam'Hadar, which I think is a thing. I don't remember. It's a
okay.
Is that the thing he puts his hand inside? I don't remember.
I think that the
Sardaukar
Sardaukar
is the mind killer.
They're like the guys in black, like the evil army guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I have to ask Dave.
We'll call him up right now. He says, Jem'Hadar, a.k.a. the reptile, those army guys from Dune. Great episode. Nicely sets up the start of the third season. And by that, I mean, yay, the show is finally starting. Full disclosure, I trusted Eris on first viewing. Sad. The Vorta are pretty neat, but how much of that is due to the very special Vorta we're introduced to in To the Death, much like how Olemo nailed the prototypical Cardassian and the Wounded, as you discussed on the podcast.
Is Sisko bald when we come back for season 3?
No, he shaves his head in season 4. I think he grows a beard midway through season 3, which is him sort of starting to change, I think.
You know what's funny? I'm sorry to derail this, but if this show is on now and halfway through the third season or halfway through the next season, Sisko started to grow a beard, you know how many think pieces there would be about people speculating that he was replaced with Mirror Universe Sisko?
Right. To the point where they'd have to address it in the show.
Yeah, because they set up the Mirror Universe in the last season.
Yep.
So, and obviously goatees mean the Mirror Universe. So clearly that's what happened.
That's true. God, do I hate watching TV in the modern era.
It sucks.
So yes, I do, and as Joy Mango mentions here, we do meet the Vorta. The Vorta, I will say now to you, Clay, the Vorta become one of my favorite species of the show that any of the Star Treks ever do. And it is because they bring in an actor who plays one that sort of redefines what they are as a role. Mm-hmm. But we'll get to that when we get to it.
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep, she really kills it as Wayun. Where's the thanks? Stephen Cobb, the Jem'Hadar. Nog is very annoying in this episode. Upon further contemplation, the whole setup with Jake and Nog doing the science project, Jake oblivious to his dad's desire for father-son time, and the subsequent reaction and acceptance by Sisko is spot on. Maybe the scene was low-hanging fruit, but it was well written and felt painfully true to life. The introduction of the Dominion was well done and feels in character for them as we know to come them over the course of the show, with one exception, Vorta pyrokinetics. So up with that, let's let's try this out and see how it feels from the writers. I do not recall this ever appearing again, and I think you're right, it never does actually appear again.
It's really the only reason that it's there is to get them out of the thing, right?
Yes.
And to set up the spy turn at the end.
Yep. No, she does it sort of uselessly when she meets them. She shoots Sisko with it for no particular reason, yeah. Matthew Ross writes, Jem'Hadar. I edited this one a little bit, Matthew. Sorry, but it was a little bit long for the purposes of this. Jem'Hadar. At first, a Love Boat Airport 77 opening with a melange of stories that are so hilarious. No. Although I can hear the Dad, can I bring my friend X along in real life on occasion, this was entirely ridiculous. However, in all of Quark's whining, the idea that the Feds are Homo sapiens only club, echoed in Star Trek VI, is an interesting take that the later shown as shown in later episodes. When I saw this originally, I'm sure that I and most of the people watching could tell she was a plant. He's talking about Eris. All I could think was the line about how the Jem'Hadar is no one escapes the Spanish Inquisition. I was fooled. I will gladly admit to the fact that Eris had me fooled. The Jem'Hadar's walking through the containment field was the creepiest, best uh-oh moment in the episode for me. The fact that their colonies and ships are getting attacked and destroyed only spells doom and gives a level of apprehension that the Borg only partially delivered. Getting to the real excitement actually in proof that the Galaxy class is not all that. Interesting battle makes you realize it was a mistake to just come out to the Gamma Quadrant. And those runabouts, not going to cut it. They need a better defense than the advanced shuttlecraft, obvious from their appearance in front of the Jem'Hadar warships.
If I were a nerd, which I'm not, clearly, I would comment that I believe isn't it Nobody Expects the Spanish Inquisition?
Yes, it is Nobody Expects. And I just double-checked here. He did write No One Escapes. Yeah.
Stop taking his money and ban him from whatever groups we have.
I was at the plant store today buying plants because that's what you do when you're middle-aged. And the announcement over the loudspeaker said, "Can John Cleese please report to the front desk?" And I was like, John Cleese?
And you immediately looked for someone walking very strangely.
the Ministry of Silly Potted Plants.
A very tall person walking very strangely up to buy a ficus.
That is one of my favorite sketches, and the argument department or whatever that sketch is, is probably my favorite meta sketch of all time.
I think I may have brought this one up before, but I really love the one where Eric Idle comes home to his dad, who seems like he's a gruff coal miner.
Right, yeah,
but his dad's a poet, and Eric Idle is a coal miner.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that.
And, yeah, my last one is the... there's one where it's like a rich upper-class family talking about woody words versus tinny words, which is really bizarre and doesn't make sense if you describe it, but it's just hysterical when you actually see it. Gourd, that's a good woody word, gourd.
I heard somewhere, I think it was, I forget which one of them it was, they were talking about how so many of their sketches were just the five of them sitting in a room with a thesaurus. Yeah. And just picking words.
Being unbelievably high.
Yeah, I went back years ago in the early days of Netflix streaming. They had the entire Monty Python run on there. And so I actually sat down and watched it while I was working. A lot more blackface than I thought there was.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of it.
Britain, I feel like Britain is a little bit behind the curve in terms of, I've talked about this with our British listeners, but when I was over there, I was watching their sort of daytime game show. It's borderline sexual assault, what the hosts are doing to the women on those
Well,
things.
have you seen that clip from some Australian talent show where this group of people come out and do a Jackson 5 routine with giant afro wigs and in full blackface?
Wow.
And Harry Connick Jr. is on the panel. And after they're done, everybody's like going, "Oh, that was so great. That was amazing." And then they get to him and he's like, that's just not something that I can't really get behind that. And they had to come back from commercial and do like a one-on-one with him and the host, where he had to explain that in America, that stuff is not exactly welcomed anymore the way it is in other places.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's slavery and stuff. I guess America is just hypersensitive to it. Yeah, you just don't do blackface on American entertainment shows. Just for our overseas listeners who are trying to dust off that act for themselves. So
note to self.
If you want to make it big in America, don't do that. That's probably the one thing you can't do. Hey everybody, I missed one of the patron comments, so I'm just going to stick it in at the end here and then get back to it. Kyle Barrett says, the Jem'Hadar. While the introduction of the Dominion is the major event of the episode, I think that my favorite part is the dynamic between Sisko and Quark. Ira Behr is the writer who truly gets the Ferengi, and actually tackling the racism we've seen from Starfleet towards them in the past is a great way to further develop the species. I'm sure that if this was produced today, there would be a DC TV-style crossover with the Enterprise going into the Gamma Quadrant at the end, but I'm glad it's not. After 7 seasons of TNG, seeing a Galaxy-class ship get completely destroyed does more to show the threat of the Jem'Hadar than anything else could. All right, that's it. Thanks very much, patrons. Back to it. Let's see here. So that's it. Thank you, patrons, for writing in. I know there wasn't many responses because we're kind of jumping ahead of the schedule and people maybe didn't have time to comment, but we'll be back to normal once Clay returns from vacation. That's it. So, Clay, we'll give our ratings here. And I wanted to, before we give a rating, I was considering revamping the rating schedule or scale, but I don't think I'm going to. But I do want to say that DS9 is a much harder show. My rating system, I feel less confident in than I do on TNG's ratings, where if someone were to say, like, go through the TNG and tell me some really good episodes, DS9 is much harder to do because TNG was purely about the episode. Everything was about the episode of TNG. DS9, and maybe you can comment on this, things are building in a way where the episodes don't stand out, and even if I give an episode a 3, it's probably better than a TNG 3 is, if that makes sense. Like, it's hard to judge them on an episode by episode basis when so much of it has been building to things, and it's not even really doing it full bore at this point. But the DS9 episodes don't stand out as highlights to me as much as they are improving on how they start telling their stories going forward. So the ratings might seem a little bit low. People aren't really complaining, but I feel like The Wire is tough for me to give a 3, but if I look at it as an episode standing on its own, it is kind of a 3 to me, even though it's more important than that in the long run.
Yeah, and it's going to be the kind of thing, I assume, where it's like we're going to get to an episode down the road that we're going to give a 5, and one of the reasons that we're going to give it a 5 is because of stuff that happened in like a handful of episodes before that was only like a 2 or whatever.
Yep.
And I mean, that's a different style of storytelling. I mean, it's it's almost like a comic book style of storytelling, to be honest with you.
Yeah. This is kind of a comic booky episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, again, it reminds me of 90s X-Men, where it's like you get the X-Men annual, where the story is Wolverine and Cyclops have to go on a camping trip with Jubilee and Boom Boom from X-Force or something, and then they end up getting captured by Genosian slavers or something.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because this is a tough. I would say it's a 3 because I think the thing that's going to be tough is, and that is inherently tough with serialized storytelling, is when you get into this kind of thing, there's going to be a lot fewer episodes that you're going to call out as being like your favorite episodes. Yeah. Like, think of, like, I don't know, anything like Daredevil or Jessica Jones or something, one of the newer shows that is very clearly like one long story.
Yep.
I can't tell you like, oh, that was my favorite episode.
No.
Or I'm not going to go back and throw on episode 5 from the first season of Daredevil just because I want to watch Daredevil. That's the one that
sticks out, yeah.
Maybe with Daredevil, you could say something like, the Kingpin episode, and then later on you've got the Punisher stuff in season 2 or whatever. But
you remember scenes, you remember moments more than episodes.
Yeah, and generally you're not going to pull an episode out of the middle of the season to just throw on the way you would with not Enterprise, TNG, or something like that. Which is interesting because we're in an even different style of storytelling than something like the X-Files, because you could do that with the X-Files. You can very easily go in and pick out your favorite episode because even though it's serialized in some form, it's still mainly self-contained. Yeah. And you can do the same thing with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is generally a little bit more serialized, but
DS9 fits into that mold, I think. DS9 is of that group. It's of the X-Files and Buffy group.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. I'll be interested to see how it changes. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit tougher. I think I agree to rate them because this one I think has great stuff in it, but I don't know if as a whole I would rate it as like a 4 or a 5.
Yeah. So you're going to give it a 3 then? That's
I'll give it a 3.
I'll give it a 4. I'll say it's like a weak 4 just because I really love the last 10 minutes of it, and I think that the Quark stuff is really good. And
yeah,
I think
I'm changing my rating. I should be a 4. It shouldn't be a 3.
You call it 4, yeah. I think it's just the problem is that it's not, the first 20 minutes are probably really not all that interesting on some level, like until they start getting into the conflicts that go on. So the pacing is wrong, but I think that this is potentially an episode that you could show someone as the first pilot of the show. If you didn't want to go back to Emissary.
Yeah, you could do that. Probably, yeah.
And I think it would make sense, and I think that it would fit everything. And I think that it's a drastic turning point, and it's a very important episode for how everything pan out going forward.
Just something that I noticed that I forgot to mention. Do you have any reason why Kira would specifically tell Odo not to go on that mission?
No.
Yeah, I thought
that
was
is
really
just a scene
strange, 'cause you
for.
would think-
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I was just gonna say I thought it was really strange because I don't think she's ever really interacted with him like that before, and obviously, and Odo is not like he's no slouch when it comes to fighting and stuff. I don't know why you would specifically tell Odo not to go.
That scene to me kind of hit on one of the problems I have with the episode is that the pacing and structure. It feels like the show maybe takes a little bit of leaps with what people are assuming is going on because Odo has a line there where he's like, I'm going to go rescue Quark because I'd rather have him in prison here than be captured by the Dominion, which he doesn't really know anything about the Dominion. You know what I mean? Like, so that seems like something you can say after a season of getting to know what they do to you, but him just sort of storming off felt like the scene was written to just be dramatic and give Odo a reason to be in the runabout at the very end.
I could see it. I honestly could see it going the other way if Odo had said to told Kira not to go.
Sure.
Because, he could have said something like, well, I don't want you acting too impulsively because they destroyed the Bajoran colony or something like that.
And we need leadership here. If Sisko doesn't come back, you're in charge over here.
Yeah, and it would have been a nice way to show Odo showing compassion, but like logically, or from what he sees as logical compassion.
Yes. Which I think fits the character more than him trying to rescue Quark on a level. Even though I understand what he's doing, and it's like you said, they are really friends deep down, even though they don't like each other. Yeah. So I just thought it was kind of a weak scene, although it hit me like emotionally right, but it didn't make sense on a technical level. Yeah, I'll give it a 4. I like this episode. I think it could be the new pilot, and that's it for DS9. Season 2, we're done. We're flying through these things. It doesn't feel like it when you look at the episode list to start, but then you finish it and you're like, wow, that's actually all that she wrote. Anything else? Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
No. I'm heading to Scotland next week.
Yeah.
Which I've never been. So that'll be fun. Gonna be there for like 5 days. Apparently drinking scotch for 5 days.
So Scottish listeners, let Clay know what to do while he's there.
Yeah, if you know anything cool to do in Islay, let me know.
And
although I don't know when this is going up, I might already be there.
That's true. Yeah, you might already. That actually, you probably will be either leaving or back by the time that's it. So Clay will be returning from Scotland. If you met him over there, this will prove that it was actually him. And let's see. I watched. I guess my just non sequitur would be I finished Love on Netflix. I highly recommend it.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed that show. I think it's really great. It's the writing is very, very good.
It's very good.
And have you watched Barry at all on HBO?
No, not yet.
Barry's so good. It's so good. And I think they're kind of part of the same thing where all of the decisions that are made by the characters matter.
Yeah.
And each have consequences that then spur on, things that happen later and later. Silicon Valley is the same way too. Like I really enjoy Silicon Valley because every decision that every character makes has some sort of consequence that they didn't think about. I'm starting
to see the machinery of Silicon Valley a little bit too much.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, Love was great, and I really enjoyed Barry. I mean, it's not. I think it's got 2 episodes left, but it's really good.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I would recommend Love. Very good. It's a take on relationships that I don't think you really see all that often. It's kind of a nice, honest. It's a comedy, so it's funny, but it's just an interesting way to look at relationships, and it certainly reminds me of being younger in a way that a lot of shows don't manage to do with the romantic comedy stuff.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Right.
And I will say though, I thought the final season they took it easy on them quite a bit.
They did. I think they wanted to focus on the other characters a little bit. And they didn't know what to do because they couldn't really. Yeah, spoilers. They couldn't really have a bigger thing between the 2 main characters.
Yeah.
If they wanted to end it that way that they did. So, but I highly recommend the first couple seasons. I thought the 3rd season was a little bit of a weaker one, but it wrapped it up nicely. And there's only 3 seasons, so it's only like 30 episodes or so.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day, I wonder if we missed a good opportunity to, if we were looking for something else to cover, to do Lost in Space.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've watched it yet, but I really liked it. I thought it was really good.
You finished it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll watch it and we can just do a one-off talk about the entire thing if you remember enough to talk about it that way. But yeah, I should probably watch that. It's only a couple episodes and it's on Netflix, and I might as well do that. It's something to watch.
We should get Sean on for that too, Murphy, because he enjoyed it. He really liked it a lot. Yeah, I'm sure.
Interesting. I'll have to talk to him and we can touch base about it. But anyway, I think that's it for Non Sequiturs. Clay, thank you very much for coming on.
Other thing I have to mention. Hopefully this is not another false start, but theoretically in the next month or so there will be a new podcast from myself and Sean Murphy about Batman the Animated Series. Finally, it's been delayed for various life reasons, but his book is done, and we've got the whole season of Batman the Animated Series recorded, and we're just got to figure out the right time to put it out. Now, hopefully, I'm going to try and do it next month, so be ready for that.
There you go. Batman the Animated Series will be out. If you guys are into that, or you're into Clay and Sean, you can listen to Batman the Animated Series, Batass, the podcast. That's it. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. We're moving on. DS9 kicks into gear. Season 3 is here, and we're only have up is the only way that we have to go, I suppose. Guys, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.